James Walker had never felt so small in his entire life. He stood on the observation deck of the transport ship, watching the planet Verith Prime grow larger through the viewport. The world was gray and ancient, covered in structures that were old when humanity was still learning to make fire. He was 34 years old, a xenoarchaeologist, a researcher of alien artifacts and dead civilizations. Back on Earth, this was considered an impressive job. Here, among the stars, he was nobody. Humanity had joined the Galactic Covenant only 300 years ago. To the elder species, humans were like children who had just learned to walk and were now trying to run with the adults. The transport landed with a gentle thud. James gathered his equipment bag and walked down the ramp. The air on Verith Prime was thin and cold. It smelled like dust, and something older than dust, something that had been waiting for a very long time. Ambassador Diana Cole was there to meet him. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had spent 20 years representing humanity to aliens who mostly looked down on them. "Dr. Walker," she said, shaking his hand, "welcome to the center of the galaxy. Try not to embarrass us." James smiled nervously. "I'm just here to study the peripheral artifacts. Nothing important." Diana nodded. "Good. Keep it that way. The Covenant is watching everything humans do. We cannot afford mistakes." She led him through the spaceport and into a ground vehicle. As they drove, James saw the Obsidian Citadel for the first time. It rose from the gray landscape like a mountain made of black glass. It was impossibly tall, impossibly old, and it made every building humanity had ever constructed look like a child's toy. "The Citadel was built by the architects," Diana explained. "They were the first civilization in this galaxy. They built the jump gates, the translation systems, everything that makes galactic society possible. Then they disappeared 900,000 years ago." "And the throne?" James asked. Diana's expression became serious. "The throne of echoes. It sits in the heart of the Citadel. Legend says whoever awakens it will receive all the knowledge of the architects. Every species in the Covenant has tried. Their greatest minds, their strongest psychics, their most advanced machines. All have failed. Most died trying." James felt a chill run down his spine. Why would anyone keep trying? Because the knowledge of the architects would change everything. Whoever holds it would lead the galaxy. So they keep sending candidates, and the throne keeps killing them. They arrived at the human delegation quarters. James spent the next few days settling in and meeting the other researchers. Commander Victor Hayes was the military attaché, a serious man who trusted nothing he could not shoot. There were scientists, diplomats, and support staff. All of them were careful. All of them knew that humanity was being watched and judged. On his fourth day, James was given a tour of the Citadel. A being called Keeper Thesson served as guide. Thesson was ancient, with 6 arms and skin like polished stone. He had watched over the Citadel for longer than human civilization had existed. "You are the new human researcher," Thesson said. His voice was like gravel sliding over metal. "You have come to study our peripheral collections." "Yes," James said. "I'm interested in the architects' daily life, their tools, their art, the small things." Thesson made a sound that might have been approval. "Most species only care about the throne. They want power, not understanding. Perhaps humans are different." They walked through halls filled with artifacts. James saw devices he could not understand, sculptures that seemed to move when he was not looking directly at them, and writing in languages that had been dead for longer than Earth had existed. Then they passed a massive doorway. It was sealed with locks that glowed with soft blue light. James stopped walking. Something was pulling at him. Something behind that door wanted his attention. "The throne chamber," Thesson said. "You feel it, don't you?" James nodded slowly. "What is that feeling?" The throne calls to those it finds interesting. But being interesting to the throne is not a good thing, human. The throne has found 4,000 beings interesting over the past 50,000 years. All of them are dead now. James knew he should walk away. He was nobody. A minor researcher from a minor species. He had no psychic powers, no genetic enhancements, no connection to ancient mysteries. He was just a man who liked asking questions about old things. But the feeling would not stop. It was like a whisper at the edge of hearing. Like a song he had known all his life, but could not quite remember. The throne has never awakened, James said quietly. In 900,000 years, with all those advanced species trying, it has never worked. Why? Thassan looked at him with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. That is the question, isn't it? Why does the throne reject those who are worthy? Perhaps it is waiting for something else. Perhaps it is waiting for someone who does not believe they are worthy at all. That night, James could not sleep. He lay in his quarters, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the sealed door and the feeling that would not leave him. He was nobody. He had no special gifts. He was just curious. But maybe, he thought as sleep finally came, maybe that was enough. In the heart of the obsidian citadel, the throne of echoes sat in darkness, as it had for nearly 1,000,000 years. But deep within its crystalline structure, something stirred. Something that had been waiting. Something that had finally found what it was looking for. 3 weeks passed. James did his work studying artifacts and writing reports that nobody would read, but every night he dreamed of the sealed door. Every morning he woke with the feeling that something was waiting for him. Finally, he could not ignore it anymore. He went to Ambassador Diana Cole with a request that he knew was insane. "You want to attempt the throne," Diana said. Her voice was flat with disbelief. "You, James Walker, a xenoarchaeologist with no special abilities. You want to try what has killed 4,000 beings from species far more advanced than us." "I know how it sounds," James said. "But something is calling me. I can't explain it." Diana was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed. "If I refuse, you'll find a way to try anyway. I can see it in your eyes. So let me make the request officially. At least that way, we control how humanity looks when this goes wrong." The request went before the Galactic Covenant. James stood in a chamber filled with beings from 12 different species. Some had bodies of light. Some had minds that existed across multiple dimensions. Some were so old that they remembered when the architects still walked among the stars. High Arbiter Volrath presided over the council. He was tall and thin, with silver skin and eyes that burned like distant suns. He had led the Covenant for 10,000 years. "A human wishes to attempt the throne," Volrath said. The way he said human made it sound like an insult. "This is unexpected." Scholar Meridian stepped forward. She was a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell. She had spent 400 years studying the throne. "High Arbiter, I must present the data. In 50,000 years, 4,217 beings have attempted to awaken the throne. Species with telepathy. Species with hive minds that connected billions of individuals. Species with technology that could reshape reality itself. All failed. Most died within moments of touching the throne." She turned to look at James. "Humans have existed in space for 300 years. They have no psychic ability, no collective consciousness, no neural enhancement worthy of mention. By every measure we have, this human is the least qualified candidate in the history of attempts." Laughter echoed through the chamber. James felt his face grow hot with shame, but he did not look away. Ambassador Diana Cole stood up. "Humanity requests the opportunity to try. We have surprised the Covenant before. We were told we could never master jump technology, and we did it in 50 years. We were told we could never survive on hostile worlds, and now we have colonies across 3 sectors. Children's tricks, another delegate said. The throne is not a puzzle to be solved with determination and luck. It requires something humans simply do not possess. High Arbiter Volrath raised his hand for silence. He looked at James for a long moment. Why do you wish to attempt this, human? Do you seek power, knowledge, glory for your species? James thought carefully before answering. I don't know, High Arbiter. I just feel like I'm supposed to try. Something is calling me. I can't explain it better than that. More laughter. But Volrath did not laugh. Very well, the High Arbiter said. Let the human attempt the throne. Perhaps it will teach his species a lesson about reaching for things beyond their grasp. The permission came with conditions. James had to pass the preliminary trials first. These were tests of memory, logic, and mental strength. He worked through them for 2 weeks, pushing himself harder than he had ever pushed before. When the results came back, Scholar Meridian delivered them personally. You passed, she said, but barely. Your scores are lower than 90% of previous candidates. Candidates who died, I should add. But I passed, James said. Yes, you passed. She studied him with curiosity. I do not understand why you are doing this. You must know you will fail. Everyone who tried before me was certain they would succeed, James said. Maybe that was the problem. The night before his attempt, Keeper Thesson came to see him. The ancient guardian moved slowly, his stone-like body creaking with every step. I have watched this citadel for a very long time, Thesson said. I have seen the greatest minds in the galaxy walk into that chamber. I have seen them carried out as corpses. I do not wish to see another death. Then why are you here? James asked. Because you are different. I do not know how, but you are different. The throne has never reached out to call someone before. It has always waited. But you felt it from the moment you arrived. James nodded slowly. What should I expect in there? Thesson was quiet for a moment. The throne does not test what you know. It tests what you are. Every candidate before you believed they knew what they were. They were wrong. Perhaps you, who knows nothing and claims nothing, will see more clearly. The next morning, James walked to the throne chamber. Ambassador Cole was there, along with Commander Hayes and a small group of human staff. Across the chamber, Covenant delegates watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt. High Arbiter Volrath spoke the ritual words. James Walker of Earth, you stand before the throne of echoes. Countless have tried and failed. Do you still wish to proceed? I do, James said. His voice was steady, even though his heart was racing. The massive doors began to open. Blue light spilled out from the chamber beyond. James took a deep breath. Diana Cole called out to him. James, whatever happens, thank you for trying. He nodded once. Then he walked through the doors, and they sealed shut behind him with a sound like thunder. He was alone with the throne. And the throne was waiting for him. The throne chamber was larger than any space James had ever seen. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above. The walls seemed to stretch into infinity, and at the center of it all sat the throne of echoes. It was made of crystal that seemed to contain entire galaxies within it. Stars burned in its depths. Nebulas swirled through its structure. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. James walked toward it slowly. His footsteps echoed in the silence. With each step, the whisper he had felt for weeks grew louder. The throne was speaking to him, though not in words. It was speaking in feelings, in memories, in something deeper than language. He stopped before the throne. Up close, he could see that the crystal was covered in writing. Billions of tiny symbols that shifted and changed as he looked at them. I'm here, he said quietly. I don't know why. but I'm here." He reached out and touched the throne. The world disappeared. James found himself floating in darkness. He had no body, no weight, no sense of time. He was just awareness drifting in an endless void. Then the throne spoke. Its voice was like 1,000 voices speaking at once, like the sound of stars being born and dying. "You have come seeking what others sought: power, knowledge, answers. You are like all the others." "No," James said. "I didn't come seeking anything. I came because you called me." The darkness shifted. "We shall see what you truly are, human. We shall see if you are worthy of what we offer." The first trial began. James suddenly found himself back on Earth. But it was Earth as it had been 15 years ago. He was standing in a university lecture hall, watching a younger version of himself fail his first major presentation. He watched himself stumble over words, forget crucial information, and see the disappointment in his professor's eyes. Then he was at his first job, being told he was not good enough. Then at a conference, where senior researchers laughed at his theories. Then at 100 other moments of failure, shame, and inadequacy. The throne showed him how small humans were compared to the elder species. It showed him civilizations that had mastered the universe while humanity was still living in caves. It showed him the contempt that other species felt for humans, the belief that they would never amount to anything. "You see the truth," the throne said. "Your species is nothing. You are nothing. Accept this truth and be at peace." James felt the weight of all those failures pressing down on him. He felt the smallness, the insignificance, the hopelessness. It would be so easy to accept it, to give up, to admit that he did not belong here. But something in him refused. "We don't have to be ancient to matter," he said. "We don't have to be powerful to try. Every species started somewhere. Every great civilization was once young and weak and foolish. That's not a reason to give up. That's a reason to keep going." The darkness shattered. The second trial began. Now James stood in a library that contained all the knowledge of the universe. Every answer to every question was here. The secrets of creation, the nature of reality, the future of all things. "This can be yours," the throne said. "All knowledge, all understanding. But there is a cost. To contain such knowledge, you must become more than human. You must release your emotions, your connections, your identity. You must become pure mind." James saw what he could become. A being of pure intellect, containing the wisdom of the architects. He would know everything. He would understand everything. But he would no longer be James Walker. He would no longer feel love or fear or wonder. He would no longer be human. "This is what you offered the others," James said. "And they accepted, didn't they? They wanted the knowledge so badly that they gave up themselves to get it." "They did, and they burned. Human minds are too small, but we can make you larger." "No," James said. "Knowledge without the heart to use it wisely is just destruction with extra steps. I don't want to know everything if it means forgetting how to care about anything." The library dissolved around him. The third trial began. James stood in emptiness. The throne's voice surrounded him. "Why are you here, human? What do you truly want?" James thought about this for a long time. He thought about the question that had driven him his entire life. Not the desire for power or glory. Not the need to prove himself to others. Just a simple, burning question. "I want to understand," he said. "I want to know why things are the way they are. I want to learn. Not to conquer or to transcend or to become something greater. Just to learn. I came here because you were a mystery, and I wanted to understand you." Silence. Then the throne spoke again, and its voice was different now. Softer, almost gentle. "For 900,000 years, we have waited. We have tested the greatest minds of 1,000 species. They came to us as conquerors. They came demanding power. They came certain of their own worth. And they all failed because they had forgotten something essential. What? James asked. Wonder, curiosity, the simple desire to learn, not to own. We did not build this throne for the powerful or the wise. We built it for those who still remembered how to be small, how to ask questions without demanding answers, how to seek truth without claiming it. The darkness began to fill with light. The elder species grew too proud. They forgot what it meant to be young, to be curious, to be uncertain. But you, human, you still remember. Your species still reaches for stars it cannot touch, still asks questions it cannot answer, still dreams of things it does not understand. The light grew brighter. This is why we called you. This is why you were chosen. Not because you are great, but because you know you are small. Not because you have answers, but because you still ask questions. James felt warmth spreading through him. Knowledge began flowing into his mind, but gently, like water filling a cup rather than a flood destroying a dam. The architects built the foundations of this galaxy, but foundations are meant to be built upon. Our time is past. Yours is just beginning. Take what we offer, young one. Take it and wonder. The throne awakened. Light exploded through the chamber, through the citadel, through the planet itself. Ancient systems that had been dormant for nearly 1,000,000 years came alive, and James Walker, a nobody from a young species, opened his eyes with the knowledge of the architects burning gently in his mind. He was still human, and he was so much more. The doors of the throne chamber opened for the first time in 50,000 years. Light poured out like water, flooding the halls of the obsidian citadel. Ancient symbols on the walls began to glow. Machines that had been silent since before any living species existed hummed to life. James Walker walked out of the chamber. He looked the same as before, but everyone who saw him knew that something fundamental had changed. His eyes held depths that had not been there before. He moved with a certainty that seemed borrowed from something far older than humanity. Ambassador Diana Cole rushed toward him. "James, are you all right?" He smiled, and it was still James's smile, still human and warm. "I'm fine." "Diana, better than fine. But we need to talk. All of us." High Arbiter Volrath pushed through the crowd. His ancient face showed something it had not shown in 10,000 years: fear. "What have you done, human? What have you awakened?" James turned to face the Covenant delegates. Beings of light, beings of crystal, beings of flesh and metal and pure thought, all of them staring at him with shock and disbelief. "The throne chose to share its knowledge with me," James said. "Not all of it. That would have destroyed me. But enough. Enough to understand what the architects wanted." "Impossible," Scholar Meridian said. Her crystalline form flickered with agitation. 4,000 beings have tried. Beings with mental capacities far beyond human limits. Why would the throne choose you? Because you were all too proud to succeed. The words hung in the air. Several delegates made sounds of outrage, but James raised his hand, and somehow that simple gesture silenced them. "I don't say this to insult you. I say it because it's true. The throne showed me everything, every attempt, every failure. You came to the throne as conquerors. You came demanding power as your right. You came certain that you deserved the knowledge of the architects." He paused, looking at each delegate in turn. The architects didn't build the throne for the mighty. They built it for the humble. They built it for those who still remembered how to wonder, how to question, how to admit that they didn't know everything. They were waiting for a species young enough to still be curious. A species that approached the universe as students, not as masters. Keeper Thesson, who had watched the Citadel for longer than any living memory, spoke. His voice was soft. The humans are still children. They still look at the stars with wonder. Yes, James said. That's exactly it. We didn't succeed because we were better. We succeeded because we were still young enough to be amazed. High Arbiter Volrath's face had gone from fear to anger. You expect us to believe that the greatest prize in the galaxy was meant for the least of species? That our thousands of years of advancement mean nothing? I don't expect you to believe anything, James said. But I'm going to share what the architects left with you anyway. He closed his eyes. When he spoke again, his voice carried something else within it, something vast and ancient. We were the first. We built the roads between the stars. We created the tools that made civilization possible. And then we left, because our time was over. But we left behind our knowledge, locked in the throne, waiting for those who would use it wisely. The voice of the architects spoke through James, filling the chamber. We watched the species that came after us. We watched them grow powerful. We watched them grow proud. And we watched them forget. They forgot that power without wonder is hollow. They forgot that knowledge without humility is dangerous. They forgot that the universe is not something to be conquered, but something to be understood. So we waited. We waited for a species that still remembered. A species that looked at the stars and asked why instead of how can we use this? A species that approached the unknown with curiosity instead of hunger. The voice faded. James was just James again. This doesn't make humanity better than anyone else, he said. It just means we happen to be what the architects were waiting for. We have a responsibility now, not a privilege. The Covenant chamber exploded into chaos. Some delegates rushed forward to ask questions. Others retreated in fear or anger. High Arbiter Volrath stood frozen, his ancient certainty shattered. Over the following days, the galaxy split in two. Some species accepted the message. They understood that the architects were not praising humanity, but challenging all species to remember what they had lost. These species formed a new coalition, willing to work with humanity and learn from the throne's awakening. Other species refused to accept it. They had spent thousands of years believing they were the highest forms of life in the galaxy. The idea that they had been passed over for lesser beings was too much to bear. These species formed a faction dedicated to proving the throne's choice wrong, by force if necessary. Ambassador Diana Cole worked without sleep, trying to hold the galaxy together. Commander Victor Hayes prepared human forces for a war that seemed increasingly inevitable. And James Walker stood at the center of it all, carrying knowledge he had never asked for and a burden he could not set down. Keeper Thesson found him on the observation deck one night, looking out at the stars. "You carry a heavy weight, young one," Thesson said. "I didn't want this," James admitted. "I just wanted to understand. That is precisely why the throne chose you. Those who seek power are not worthy of it. Those who seek only understanding, they are the ones who can be trusted." Thesson bowed his head, his ancient stone body creaking. "I have watched empires rise and fall. I have seen species conquer and be conquered. But I have never seen what I see in you. Perhaps you humans truly are what this galaxy needed. Perhaps we forgot something that you still remember." James looked at the stars, carrying the knowledge of the architects and the hopes of his species. "I hope we're worthy of this," he said quietly. "So do I," Thesson replied. "So do I." The rejection faction, led by species who could not accept the throne's choice, had launched attacks across human space. Colony worlds were threatened. Trade routes were blocked. Messages of hate and contempt flooded every communication channel. Ambassador Diana Cole had not slept more than 4 hours at a time since the crisis began. She moved from negotiation to negotiation, trying to prevent full-scale war. Some days she made progress. Most days she did not. Commander Victor Hayes led the human defense fleet. He had never expected to fight a galactic war, but he was doing it anyway. His ships were outnumbered and outgunned, but humanity had learned long ago how to fight against impossible odds. And James Walker sat in the Obsidian Citadel, carrying knowledge he barely understood, and trying to remain himself. The throne had changed him. He knew things now that no human had ever known. He understood the mathematics of reality, the patterns of time, the secrets of matter and energy. But with every passing day, he felt himself becoming something less human and more like the architects who had left their wisdom behind. He fought against it. He called his family on Earth every night, listening to his mother talk about her garden and his brother complain about his job. He read human books and watched human movies and ate human food. He held on to the small things that made him James Walker instead of just a vessel for ancient knowledge. But it was getting harder. Diana found him one morning, staring at the throne chamber doors. "They're coming for Earth," she said. "The rejection faction. They've gathered their full fleet. They're going to destroy our homeworld to prove that the throne made a mistake." James closed his eyes. He could feel the approaching fleet. He could feel the hatred driving them. He could feel the certainty that burned in their hearts, the belief that they deserved the architect's legacy and humanity did not. "How long do we have?" 12 hours. Victor is gathering every ship we have, but it won't be enough. We're going to lose." James stood up. He had been afraid of this moment. He had known it was coming. The throne had given him weapons that could destroy entire fleets with a thought. He could burn the rejection faction out of the sky. He could make humanity the most powerful force in the galaxy. But that was not what the architects had wanted. That was not why they had chosen him. "There might be another way," he said. The human fleet gathered around Earth, thousands of ships against tens of thousands. Commander Hayes knew the mathematics were against them, but he deployed his forces anyway. Humanity had faced extinction before. They would face it again. The rejection faction arrived in a wave of fire and fury. Their weapons blazed against human shields. Their voices filled every channel with threats and condemnation. "You are not worthy," the fleet commander screamed. "The throne belongs to the great species, not to primitives who still remember their animal ancestors." On the bridge of the flagship, Hayes watched his ships fall one by one. The line was breaking. Earth's defenses were failing. In hours, maybe less, everything humanity had built would be gone. Then the message came from Verith Prime, from James Walker. "Victor, hold the line. Just hold on." "We're trying, James, but we're running out of time." "I know. I'm doing something that might fix this, or might make everything worse. But I have to try." James stood before the throne of echoes. He placed his hands on its surface and felt the power flowing through him. He could destroy the fleet. It would be so easy. One thought, and every enemy ship would become dust. But the architects had not chosen him for destruction. They had chosen him for understanding. He reached out across the stars, not with weapons, but with truth. He touched the minds of every being in the rejection fleet, not to hurt them, not to control them, just to share. He gave them the trial of echoes. Every soldier, every commander, every being in that fleet suddenly experienced what James had experienced in the throne chamber. They felt their own pride. They saw their own certainty. They understood how it had blinded them, limited them, trapped them in patterns they could not break. They felt the smallness that comes before wisdom. Some could not accept it. Their minds shattered under the weight of truth, and they collapsed into madness or silence. But most understood. They saw what the architects had seen. They felt what James had felt. They stopped fighting. The fleet fell silent. Weapons powered down. Ships drifted in the dark between stars, their crews weeping or praying or simply sitting in stunned silence. On Earth, Commander Hayes watched his tactical display in disbelief. "James, what did you do?" "I showed them what I saw. The rest was up to them." High Arbiter Volrath appeared before the new Galactic Assembly 1 week later. The rejection faction had dissolved. Many of its members had returned to their homeworlds to think about what they had experienced. A few had asked to visit the throne themselves, to try again with humbled hearts. Volrath knelt before the assembly. For the first time in 10,000 years, the High Arbiter bowed his head. "We spent millennia believing we were the galaxy's greatest inheritors. We forgot that inheritance must be earned with each generation. We forgot that wisdom is not something you achieve and keep forever. It must be renewed. It must be remembered. Humanity has reminded us of this." James Walker returned to Earth. He could have stayed on Verith Prime, could have become a leader or a king or a god. The throne would have supported any choice he made. But he wanted to go home. He wanted to be human. 6 months later, he stood in a classroom at the University of New Chicago. Students from 12 different species sat before him. Humans and aliens together, learning about the architects and the civilizations that came before. A young student, half human and half something else, raised her hand. "Dr. Walker, you've seen more than anyone alive. You carry the knowledge of 1,000,000 years. What would you say is the most important discovery in the galaxy?" James smiled. It was still his smile, still human and warm, even after everything. "The next one," he said. "Always the next one. Because the moment we stop asking questions, the moment we think we've found all the answers, that's when we start to fail." The architects knew this. That's why they left the throne for someone who was still wondering instead of someone who thought they already knew. He looked out the window at the stars. "Keep wondering," he said. "Keep asking. Keep reaching for things you don't understand. That's what makes us worthy, not the answers we find, but the questions we're brave enough to ask." In the obsidian citadel, the throne of echoes glowed softly in the darkness. It was no longer waiting. It had found what it was looking for. And somewhere across the galaxy, a young being from a species humanity had never met looked up at unfamiliar stars and felt, for the first time, a strange and wonderful feeling. Curiosity. Wonder. The beginning of something new,